Welcome to today's show. So glad to have you here with me. I'm Ivory LaNoue, and today's topic is what is a spiritual journey? Before I get into that, I want to say a hello to my listeners in Bucharest, Romania. I have so many fond memories of my trip there. I was back in the 90s and the people were so friendly and I just had a wonderful time. My favorite thing was being able to see medieval cities, medieval structures, but the people were wonderful. So thank you for tuning in. So happy to have you here. The reason I'm doing this topic today is a couple of listeners contacted me and asked me specifically, what is the spiritual journey? And that was a good reminder for me because I work in the spiritual field and I'm surrounded by people who are in the spiritual field and really attuned to all things spiritual. And sometimes I forget that I might be using terms that people are not completely familiar with. So I think sometimes it's good to go back to basics of what am I talking about when I say when you're on a spiritual journey. So I made some notes about this, like some aspects of it. And a very important one is your spiritual awakening, which is part of your spiritual journey. And so you might have one big, powerful spiritual awakening, and that is a moment when it's sort of an epiphany moment or something big happens that's supernatural. Like maybe you start seeing angels, you start seeing spirit, hearing spirit. You know, it could be anything. You could be getting a healing and have a major spiritual awakening, but it's something that just shifts inside of you and things make sense in a different way. You start to understand things you didn't before, and more importantly, even being curious and interested in things you weren't before. So it's an awakening to the spiritual world and to your spiritual self, to you being a being of light, an ongoing eternal soul. That also can happen in a series of small ones. And so you might have a little awakening, then later another one. And I actually call those like shifts on your spiritual journey. So you're going along on your journey, which I'll explain more about, and you suddenly have another little awakening about things. Oh, I'm going to tell you one of mine like that was crazy. Like I had a big, powerful spiritual awakening back in '84 when all of these astral beings, when angels, angels were always coming in, but they started bringing in astral beings, and I felt overwhelmed. I wasn't sure what was going on. I didn't have anybody to talk to about it, but it did really put me on a journey where I was even more exploring into spirituality, paranormal, supernatural, trying to figure out what's going on here. Then over the years, other little things would happen. And the last one, I can't even say it was a little thing, but it was back it's probably 10 years ago. I was watching a TV show and it was that Long Island Medium. And I'm just watching it, casually. And she's talking about her childhood and how she would hear spirits talking to her and calling her name. And she was going into some specifics. And my boyfriend at the time said, Ivory, that sounds like your childhood. And I remember, you hear about epiphany moments, but it was like a giant light bulb went off over my head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a medium. All my life I've seen spirit, heard them, seen angels, heard them. No, I always considered myself a sensitive. I just kind of pushed it off, poo-pooed it off to the side. No, I'm just a sensitive. And I realized in that moment that I had been born with mediumship ability, God-given gift. And that's what started my journey to start offering. I studied with Suzanne Wilson for a full year, private lessons, very intense, and then did a ton of practice readings till I felt comfortable. But the point being, I was 54 years old when that happened. So I'd been on a journey since I was 18. And at 54, I had that awakening. So people sometimes ask me, is it too late to start on my journey? Is it too late to switch careers? Is it too late to start following my passion? I think I'm an example that it's not. If you want to do it, if you feel strongly enough, you can. So along with the awakening comes a curiosity. I mentioned that briefly a few minutes ago. But you start getting curious, like, what is out there that I haven't experienced? What are people experiencing that I might find interesting? What do I want to experience? What do I want to know about? I have a lot of people come to me because my specialty is angels. And a lot of people come to me and they're like, I've always felt a connection to angels. I just want to know more about them. That's a great example of that curiosity. I know I have them. I know they're there. I want to know more. It could be about anything, though. It could be about anything in the realm of spirituality, metaphysics, healing, paranormal, even. I mean, honestly, these things sort of interchange a lot. Another thing would be you start talking to people. And what I found was that the further I went on my journey, the more people started coming into my life unexpectedly, who you wouldn't think. And I'm just going to say, so a good friend I met was studying with Belinda Howe. And she said, you need to study with Belinda Howe. And I never heard of Belinda Howe. So I met her. I studied with her for about 1.5 years, again, private lessons. And in that, what I was learning at that early stage, because that was, way back in like 92, 91, 92, and maybe earlier, I was studying Reiki, which was another thing that really opened me up spiritually. I recommend it to my clients and students a lot. I learned about vocal toning, which is using your voice to do sound healing. I learned about crystals. I learned to further attune my natural psychic ability. And there were other things too that she brought to my awareness that I hadn't really realized that was even a gift of mine. When you're able to do something your whole life, you tend to not think much about it. I mean, yes, I thought about seeing spirits, seeing angels, hearing them. I knew that was unusual, but some of the other things, like being an empath, I just thought, I was always told, you're too sensitive. You're so sensitive. And now I'm proudly, yes, I am. I am an empath. I am such an empath. And so it's partially about just a discovery of who you are, the gifts you have, maybe even the gifts you'd like to develop or see if you can. Sorry, I'm having allergy eyes. It makes my eyes water. I'd love to say I'm teared up over the topic, but no, that's not it. So you're talking to people. Either you're going to be drawn to people who, it turns out, are on a spiritual journey and probably more knowledgeable than you are, further along on it, and they can give you some information that's going to help you go to the next step. Or you're going to find yourself just wanting to talk about spiritual topics more often. And I have to tell you that that's one of the reasons I moved to Sedona. My angels didn't give me much choice. They're like, you need to move to Sedona, move over the mountain from Prescott to Sedona, and you're going to start your spiritual business full time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really didn't want to do that. But they were right. And it's been wonderful. But the point being, sometimes you just have to follow that inner guidance. So what happened was I moved to a place where there's much more people who are in spirituality world, very knowledgeable about it, open to talking about it. So I didn't feel so isolated, because I did create my own spiritual circles in Prescott and in Cave Creek when I lived there. And I just created a meetup group, and I started it off very generic. Let's get together and let's have a meal together, to have a potluck meal and talk, and then we'll figure out what we want to do from there. So then I joined some down in the valley as well. When I lived in the Phoenix area, there were a lot of spiritual circles, but having a spiritual circle is important. You need to have people to talk to. So if you don't know anybody, it's time to branch out, find a group, create one. The next thing would be reading books. I find most people, myself included, early on their journey, it involves reading books. And the first one I read that really stuck with me was The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Big fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer. That book was the one that really struck me with how important it is what we think and about ourselves, about others, as far as creating the reality around us. And he put it in words, maybe because I don't know, it was words that I resonated with, that I could really connect with. You need to find the books that work for you. Another one that I loved really early on was The Four Agreements by Don Ruiz Miguel, another one of my very favorites, San Miguel Ruiz. And well, it's right here. Let me see. Let me get it straight here. It's right here. Don Miguel Ruiz. Yes, this is the book. So that was another one. And then I went on to read, I have this one here too, The Violet Flame by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. So those are books, like, not only did they have a big impact on me reading them, but they continue to have a big impact. And those are the ones that, the ones that right away you just feel like, I need to implement some of these changes into my life. What you're doing is starting a spiritual practice, which I will talk about later. So the next step would be, you find yourself watching shows, movies. A lot of my clients and students who are fairly new on their journey, one thing they really love is Gaia TV. And they'll always ask me about shows on Gaia. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And there's other ones out there too. So another one is there's a, oh gosh, what the bleep, something, I can't remember the name of it, but that was a really good one on quantum physics. What the bleep do we know anyway, I think is what it's called. That was a great one. And it really created a lot of buzz. It really was an awakening for a lot of people. They're like, wow, all this stuff's going on out there. I've never experienced that. I'd love to experience that. So the curiosity takes you step by step to each one of these. And if your journey doesn't unfold just like this, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey. You are an individual. Your spiritual journey will be an individual journey for you. It's perfectly fine. If you're not into reading, maybe you go straight to books on tape, oh my God, I'm dating myself, audiobooks, or you watch something on TV, do what you need to do. After that one is usually people are like, I want something more personal. I want a personal experience. And that is important. And that's when people will reach out to someone like me and say, hey, Ivory, I want a reading. Here's where I'm at. I'm so curious, I'm here. What do you recommend? And I will really tune into that and see what my angels say for them too, and what I get intuitively, and suggest a session for them. And I know that that's like the start for them. They may stay with me as a client. They may get what they need from me and move on to somebody else. It's fine. You can have multiple mentors at the same time on your spiritual journey. And I've had 3 major mentors in my life. I still have Suzanne Wilson, but I have had others that have taken me as far as I could go with them. And then I went and found the next one, and it wasn't really looking for it. They just sort of dropped into my lap because it was meant to be. So the second thing, and when I say getting a reading, it could be a psychic reading so that you're getting personal knowledge about yourself. It could be like Meet Your Angelic Guides reading I do, where you learn about your angels, what they look like, their names, their personal messages for you. It could be mediumship because you want to connect with someone you love. You need to know the afterlife is real. You need proof of that. You need to know your loved one is there and fine. You need, I'm feeling spirit come in as I say that. Whatever it is. Another thing, it can happen instead of the reading. It can happen after, before, is getting a healing. And remember how I said that for me, learning Reiki was very powerful. Like, I feel like that really opened my chakras and everything increased at that point, like my intuitive ability, even my empath nature increased at that point. My healing ability increased because, frankly, I started on my journey as a healer doing medical Qigong energy healing, and I did it for a very long time for many people, and my back won't let me do it anymore. But that was really important. I loved healing people. So go get a healing, find one that looks for you. And I like to say, find a person that you feel connection with. It all starts with the person. So look at their picture, tune into their name. If you can listen to them speaking, tune into how that feels for you. And then look at their list of services and see, just kind of tune in and see which one you feel pulled to. What do you feel attracted to? And start there. I like Reiki as a good starting point, but there's so many great healings out there. We just did a show on the Sedona Soul Sisters podcast Friday that was on sound healing, and Sedona's son, who works with us, does fabulous sound healings. Those are very, very powerful. Those just resonate through your whole body, and you kind of leave feeling like you're floating above it all, disconnected from a lot of stress, which is a nice thing for all of us these days. So getting the healing not only clears your energy, makes you feel better, but it can also be the next thing that lifts you to the next stage of your spiritual journey. All of this is part of the journey. Let me be very clear. All of this is part of a spiritual journey, though you don't have to do all of it. The next thing would be going to workshops and retreats. And some people start there. Some people just really want, especially if they had a big awakening, they just want to jump in and they're going to go to like a 5-day retreat in Hawaii. Doesn't that sound good? So retreats can be wonderful. Here in Sedona, there's a ton of retreats. People are coming. I see a lot of clients who are here for a retreat and see me while they're here. It's a nice thing to get away from home, go to a beautiful place, be with other people who are in the same journey you're on, and learn something specific. That helps you shift forward. That can be a real powerful shift, that immersion in more time in a spiritual setting. But you can also benefit a lot from workshops. When I lived in the Phoenix area in Cave Creek, I went to quite a lot of workshops that local practitioners were doing. And sometimes it was a 1 day, a 2 hour, a 4 hour. My feeling about it is, if I'm drawn to it, there's probably going to be at least one gem of information that I'm going to take away from that training, and it's going to be good for me. It's going to improve my practice, improve my spirituality, improve me personally on some level. So never have they been a waste. The next thing would be putting it into practice. Now, here is where, sadly, a lot of people get stuck. They get all the knowledge, they read, they watch the videos, they go to retreats, and then they never put it into practice. That's the true growth, is when you're actually doing these things. So you go to a meditation, let's say a meditation retreat. You learned how to meditate, you really enjoyed it, and then you don't do it again. You're not getting any benefits from it. So if you go to something you're drawn to, like a meditation retreat or workshop, then make sure to put it into your practice. And a spiritual practice, this part of your journey, is what you do on a daily basis that is to balance yourself, protect, shield yourself from toxic, negative energy, lift your frequency up, tune into your angels, tune into God, all these things that I like. Gratitude, I'll tell you mine. First thing in the morning before I get out of bed, I like to state 5 things. I tell God and the angels, thank you, I'm so grateful for, and then I'll list 5 things. And those things, some of the things are consistent and some change day to day. And sometimes I have more than 5. I just can't restrain myself, and I don't have to. So the next thing I do is I surround myself, as I'm lying in bed, I surround myself in multiple levels of golden bubbles of God's light and protection. It sounds so esoteric, but it works. And for anybody who's sensitive like I am, if you're an empath or you're not ready to call yourself that, you're just very sensitive, please try this. Sometimes I need to put 7 bubbles around myself to be around certain circumstances, or people. The other thing is, I say, this is going to be a wonderful day. And God, send me to people I can help today. I am ready to serve. Then I get up. So then it's time to do some meditation. I do my grounding, and then the shower as the water is coming over the top of my head. Anytime the water is coming right over the top of my head, I will be saying my blue waterfall protection, which you can find on my website, ivoryangelicmedium.com, under resources, spiritual protection. And you just say that as you're showering, and it just pulls negativity right out of your body. If you've been in a bad mood, if you're having trouble shaking something that happened, something's really been bothering you, you've been around negative, toxic people, it just pulls it right out. And then throughout the day, I'm talking to my angels. They're there all the time. Yours are too. And if you don't see and hear them yet, you can. Just know that. And then I do my spiritual protection before certain sessions. Yeah, but to start my day, some more for certain sessions. And then before I go to bed, I am again doing 5 things, doing my gratitude, and I do prayers, and then I do healing, and I do distance healing on my family, my friends, clients that need it, their family that needs it. I just have a long list of people that I'll just lay there and with my eyes closed, and I will just tune in on what's going on for them and do healing for them. So that's my spiritual practice. And then it's all the moments in between too, all the moments that life sends you little pop quizzes. A difficult person, maybe you get a snippy checkout lady at the grocery store. This is a pop quiz to see how good you're doing with your spiritual practice. Are you going to respond with the same energy? Or are you going to respond with kindness and some compassion? You have got such a rough job here. I want to thank you for the work you've been doing and how hard you've been working through this time. And or even just smiling, saying, I hope the rest of your day gets better. You know, it's not always going to turn things around, but you are not going to make the world a better place by responding in kind to unkindness. So those I consider to be little tests that God sends us to see how we're doing. And if you didn't handle it the way you wish you could or you should in your mind, then that's something to think about, and you'll do better the next time. But it is all those little moments in between as well. I think part of it too is taking what you've learned and applying it to the people in your life. So based on what you've learned, do you think that I really have come to this conclusion? The most difficult people in our lives are actually our soul family, who cares the most deeply and loves us the most deeply and volunteered to come into this lifetime and be a challenge for us, to help us level up, to help us grow even further, to be a better person, to rise above adversity, whether it's a person or a situation. And they love us deeply. And if you can look at it that way, of that this is the challenge that's put before me, how am I going to use all the knowledge I've learned on my spiritual journey to interact with this person going forward? If you continue to go back to old patterns with the people in your life or with situations you encounter, then you're stuck in a rut. So you need a little jolt out of there. The next thing would be you feel a shift in priorities. And again, these can happen in different orders, but the shift in priorities is a big one. We talk about that at the office. People will often come in and tell us, I have loved being a doctor for so long, and I just don't feel the passion anymore. Or I've been in the corporate world a long time and it's always been fun. It's been a challenge. I've loved it. And now it's all I can do to make myself go to work. And I just wait, and they're going to say something to the effect of, I want to do something more meaningful. And let me just say, more meaningful is whatever more meaningful means to you. It's not a judgment about what you are doing versus what you could be doing. It's whatever more meaningful means to you. So I'll give you an example here. I worked in radio for quite a long time and I loved it. My daughter was young then. It was really fun. I used to take her to live remotes with me and to the big events that I put on, like bridal expos and things of that sort. And it was just really fun for us. But at one point, there just was this point where I started feeling something's not right. This isn't working for me anymore. It doesn't feel right. And I didn't, it just wasn't working for me. And I started thinking about that I want to work in the field of mental health. And there's a lot of depression in my family. I'm blessed I didn't have it, but there's a lot of people I love who have severe depression. And I see how hard it is for them. And I think that's why I was pulled in that direction. But my angels are like, you're going to go back to school. You're going to get a degree in psychology. You're going to get a job. And I did. I mean, everything just fell into place. And before you know it, I'm working at a psychiatric hospital. And I worked there for a long time. And I worked in that field for over 16 years in the mental health field. I loved it. I loved the clients. I loved my work. It was very challenging and interesting. And then my angels said, now you have to leave and go to Phoenix. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to live in Phoenix. It really didn't work for me before. I'm a small town girl. I don't know about that. And I went down there and I couldn't figure out why. It really, some things happened that seemed so random and negative really, but I connected with people who were giving me little awakenings the whole time. That's why I was drawn there. And the next thing I know, my angels are like, okay, Ivory, now you got to move to Sedona and start a business and you're doing your spiritual work full time. And I thought, what a weird work history. But no, everything I've ever done is helping me tremendously in the work I do now, in my business I have now. You're going to find the same thing for you. So don't try not to fight it too hard. It's not going to do you any good in my experience and those I know. If you are being pulled to do something different and it's you're losing passion for what you've been doing, it's time to start making the change. It won't go away. The last part of it is when you come to a place where people are asking you for knowledge, for advice, for guidance, and then you're going to realize, oh my goodness, I'm now a teacher, but that's the way it happens is you're the student, you're the student, you're the student, boom, you're the teacher. So you get enough knowledge under your belt, you get enough experience, and you're teaching people one way or another. You do not have to ever open a business and teach, have readings or offer classes or courses to be a teacher. It can just be people, casually who the conversation turns to something spiritual and they realize you're knowledgeable and they're kind of picking your brain about it. They're really curious. You just find people coming to you. And a lot of times at that point, people will have that imposter syndrome. I have a few students right now going through that who are like, who am I to be a teacher? Who am I to be giving advice? I'm like, well, your teachers probably thought that early on too. They probably felt the same thing. I did a little bit feel that but then I realized I'd been on a journey for a long time and had been studying and had a lot of knowledge and it was okay. It was fine. And I wasn't a young person, which I think helped me too, that it's one good thing about the field of spirituality is that age tends to bring wisdom if you did it right, if you did your journey right, and people respect that. And they like that you've got life wisdom. So another reason why it's never too late to get involved in something spiritual if you want to. Don't be afraid to share your knowledge. There is no perfect person, no perfect teacher, no perfect mentor. We're all imperfect, flawed humans doing the best we can to be better people, to progress spiritually, to know more, to understand more. My thing every day is I'm like asking God, help me be a better person today than I was yesterday. And it's not that I was a bad person yesterday, but I was imperfect. I didn't do everything exactly the way I would like to or think I should. And I know there's room for improvement and I want to improve. I'm not striving for perfection because that is a losing battle. And I think it's a waste of time. So I don't even go on that, but I do want to be better every day. And for me, it's usually about how I think, what I say, or how I react. And I want to be, I try to be calm. And I feel like I am a calm, serene person overall. And I like to be a source of balance and calm for other people. I think people need that. There's so much going on in the world right now and uncertainty that people need some balance. And so if I stay calm and balanced within myself, I can provide that to others, not just my students and clients, but my friends, my family, acquaintances, people I meet out and about in the world. So I hope that this explains it better. And I know that the term spiritual journey is one that we use all the time. And now you have a better idea of the breakdown of it. I am going to post this on my website, ivoryangelicmedium.com, and you'll be able, it'll also have a link back to the show, but you'll be able to see it in writing. So hopefully that'll help you. And if any of you out there have other questions about terms I'm using, things I'm talking about that I've never really explained, please let me know, because I don't want to leave you hanging like that. I'd really like to help you understand what we're discussing and make it clear. Tune in next Sunday. The topic is Archangel Haniel, and she is known as the Grace of God. That will be a pre-recorded show, no live show next week. In the meantime, I want to thank you for tuning in today, and it's been such a joy to be able to share information with you again. I appreciate all of you. May your angels surround you. May your angels protect you every moment, every day of your life. I'll see you next week.